Hello, let's talk about books. I have my April books here, and they are, I'm not going to do chronologically this time. I did a couple that I DNF or skimmed, and then we'll do a couple children's book adjacent type things, and then some good ones, another one I kind of skimmed, and the faves at the end. I feel like housekeeping wise, it's been just over a year since I started talking about every book that I read, which has been super fun, and it honors me so much, and I'm so grateful when people watch my videos and tell me that, because I love ideas more than almost anything, and I believe that talking about them is really important, and it's special to me to get to do this. I remember when YouTube was invented, and so it's still kind of cool the way it is. So there's such a low barrier to entry to disseminate the ideas that I think matter, or talking about books that I loved. I also, and I feel like this comes through in my channel description that says slow videos about books, but I really believe that talking about books and then video editing and being good at that are two different skills, and I have chosen to only care about this side of the skill. I understand that these videos are not attention grabbing, and I really love YouTubers who do both. I think Newly Nova is a book YouTuber who does that pretty well. She has a lot of quick cuts between even sentences. And then Makara Tours is always my favorite everything. Theoretically a sewing tutorial person, but just creative and silly, and she's one of my faves. So she's good at the editing and the goofing off, and I know this isn't that. And so thank you for, I care a lot about cultivating a high quality of attention in myself, and I think that's it takes a lot of work to do that. So I guess just another way I guess I'm just saying, I know there's more entertaining, fun things that you could watch. And obviously sometimes that's the way to go. But if you ever do land here, I'm grateful. It is hot today, and I have to close all the windows for the sake of the sound editing situation, and the AC units aren't in, which doesn't matter because I can't have those on even when, actually it does matter because I can get the house really cold and then turn them all off before we shoot. But you have seen the ice pack situation before. I brought this big one, which I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to put directly on your skin, but I am a heat machine and it will not hurt me. So let's get started. Come here, baby. Okay. The first book. Oh, guys, this one kind of hurt. Okay. This, how are we gonna? Just a few little books. There we go. This book is called Our Sister's Keeper. It's by Jasmine Holmes. This is an ARC. It doesn't come out until June, and it is about a made-up version of a town in Mississippi where it's segregated, but theoretically equal-ish. So the black side of town has doctors and lawyers and infrastructure, and the two sides, East Cobb and West Cobb. Is that a Gatsby reference? I just said that out loud. It has to be. Are separate. No, West Egg. Just food words. I don't know why I slipped those into each other. So it follows two storylines. One where there's some weird magical stuff happening. So it's a almost what's psychologist, but spooky. Help me. You know, where people read your palms. I cannot think of the word. It won't be up here. Okay. The word never came to me. But you know what I mean. A palm reader type thing. It's that, but the women who provide the service live at the house take on the bad memories of the men of the town so that the town can continue to thrive. And you get the vibe very early on that this is something that's dangerous and not sustainable. And it just chews through these women who have this magical power. Then the other storyline follows a couple who moves to Mississippi from DC, and you get a kind of, she can hear these screaming voices that everyone else acts like they can't hear. And what they do about that is they give her these smelling salts, and those kind of muddle her mind and calm her down. And then she moves into this house that's provided. Her husband's going to be the principal or something, and she's like a lady journalist, and everyone laughs about that idea. And then the house is kind of Stepford Wives vibes, like picket fences, everything is perfect. And that is the setup. Maybe that's 40 or 60 pages in, I'm not sure. And nothing about it was working for me, basically. So I didn't continue reading it. I didn't even skim to the end. The first thing was the obviousness of all the themes and the writing. The second thing was the writing and the phrasing was really, honestly, it was distracting. Like, to try to figure out how the words meant what she was trying to make them mean. I thought the language wasn't very precise. That's what I'll say. And then third, it did not feel like the South, and it's set in the South. I think you can tell that from the cover. This does not look like it's set in rural Mississippi. This looks like it's set maybe in New Orleans, or maybe more like somewhere magical. But the book itself, you know, the authors don't necessarily pick the cover. The cover represents the book in that it doesn't feel like the South at all. And so that was enough for me to not be interested in it anymore. I could read examples of like the language. Like, there's this one part where so the couple is arriving at the train station, and Thea shielded her eyes with her gloved left hand, iron grip holding her carpet bag aloft in her right. That's so like clunky and hard to read, and it has too many words. Like, we don't need to know what each hand is doing. Also, like left and right, like you can just say, I don't know, one hand or the other. When you hold something aloft, you're like holding it aloft of something else, whereas when you're just holding a bag, you're just holding it. And then Thea's right arm, again, why are we labeling our arms, grew light when Kid, the husband, hoisted her bag up along with his. But he's not putting it on anything, he's just taking the bag from her. Like, to hoist is like this big motion. There were so many verbs that were used differently from what they mean. And maybe that would work for some people. And it wasn't everywhere, but I found it really distracting. You guys have heard me say similar things with certain parts of Emily Henry books, for example, where she'll just, or transition, the first book in this series, there was this moment, I don't know if I talked about it, but the couple is like in a booth and they're like cuddling, and then she's like let me get out, like, I'm gonna go get the food, but you know that she's in the corner of the booth, and then she just like slides out, and I'm like, you have to move these characters through physical space like it's real. And really, I feel like I could have a little cottage industry of my over literal self doing a beta read for authors and telling them where the literal motions of their characters don't make sense, because every mind thinks differently, and mine really fixates on that. So that was Our Sister's Keeper. I will say Olivia and Lo both loved it, so that could be a good fit for you if the things that I listed wouldn't bother you. I was trying to figure out how to say that like I mean it, because I do. The next book I read is And Now Back to You, which is the second in the romance series by B.K. Borson. The first one I was pretty unimpressed with because it did the thing that bothers me probably the most, although why do we rank them? I can have a lot of things that bother me, which is using way too many words to get through a story. So I think it's totally fine if when you write, you come out with something that's, I don't know, 420 pages, but then you need to go back through and say, okay, this conversation is 4 pages long. Could it be 1 page long? Could it be 1 paragraph long? And B.K. Borson does not do that. And it makes her books pretty unreadable to me. So I skimmed through this one. There were a couple thematic or different types of decision strengths that she showed that I appreciated. It was a communication thing. At one point in their forced proximity, they're on a work trip, one of them just says, I like you. And that is how we get to the next point in their relationship. When I read that, I was like, have I ever read a romance book where 2 adults get to this point and then one of them just says, I like you? Because that is like the most important and succinct thing to say to decide whether you're going to kiss or date or not talk to each other because it makes the other one uncomfortable, like whatever it is. So some of that was good. I don't remember a lot of it. Some of her specifics are good. I don't like using moral words. Some of her specifics are effective, but I don't really have anything else to say about this. I skimmed the whole thing. Oh, there's also interstitial bits that did not work as well as the first book. So in the first book, it's a podcast. The guy's a radio host. So there will be little bits from the radio show or from social media for the radio station that were really kind of fun commentary, like the favorites style. This one had these same kind of thing, but they were TV with other people, and they mostly were just kind of there. So, bummer for that. Then, I read A Swiftly Tilting Planet by Madeline L'Engle, and this is the 3rd book in the Wrinkle in Time series. I was sold it by a bookseller who says this is one of her favorite books of all time. She just very politely listened to me try to sell her The Pinderwicks, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And she unquestioningly said you can just read this one as a standalone. Always a strange bit of advice. You never really know if someone's for real, if they're right about that. I'm not convinced that she was. I had not read A Wrinkle in Time, still haven't. It was one of only 3 or 4 kids' books on the Atlantic's list of Great American Novels, which I love that list because they did 134 books because they just decided that as many books as they wanted to put on the list, they should, which is great because acting like things that are quantitative are not also something we make up is kind of silly. So I have read Walking on Water by L'Engle, Reflections on Faith and Art. This is nonfiction, and it's about being an artist and a writer, and I really love it. Like, I have it shelved in nonfiction versus in books about writing, which is actually kind of interesting now that I say that. I'm gonna see if I can find my favorite. Oh, this really aligns well with Mystery and Manners by Flannery O'Connor, as 2 writers who care a lot about grace and how stories portray grace, and a willingness to do that in a way that isn't obvious or sticky, gross Christian-y. And I love that about both of them. Flannery is all the way over there, so I don't know. I could get the stepladder out because this is in a new spot today. Please hold. Look, she has nothing against stepladders. You can't say she does. This is one of two. Maybe we don't leave it in the shop though. Copies of this book that I have. Man, I should not have spoken while I was moving that around. I bet that was a terrible sensory experience for you. I'm very sorry. I think it would be funny, actually we can do it right now because I think there's not that many of them, to see which books on this shelf I have more than one copy of on the shelf. Sometimes that happens, especially with really, really good ones. I have 2 copies of Mystery of Manners. This one matches the FSG imprint Complete Stories and Wise Blood, which I don't actually have. And then this one was the first one that I got, and so it has all my notes from my thesis, my senior high school thesis, and a little baby picture from when I was in college and I went, I guess, let's just fill out to Flannery O'Connor's grave in Milledgeville, Georgia, where I had a $1 mimosa, which is hilarious. And that's the only reason that I got it. And it had so much pulp in it. But I guess in a little college town called Milledgeville, that economically is something available to you on like a Friday morning. So anyway, I like this stack to be visible to the people of the world. But that would mean we're just doing it all today. Please hold. So I had not read any of Langle's fiction. I hadn't read her children's books, and I had seen the movie for A Wrinkle in Time years ago when it came out and was like, that was fine, I think I should read the book. Then I read this, and it had so much that worked, and then there was 1 or 2 sections that really, like, the conceit is it's a family that's in all the books, and they're sitting down at Thanksgiving, and the dad is like this really important physicist, and he gets a call from the president, and it's, you know, this dictator might be declaring nuclear war or something. So then one of them who's a kid, he's like 16, and then his older sister who's like 21 and married, do some time travel mind melding to try to figure this out and maybe change history. I think that's a pretty, yeah, that's basically what it is. So every couple of chapters, you're switching to a different point in history to see a different descendant, or more like ancestor, of this dictator, and the way that they make decisions. And you go through some native history, some Welsh history, some colonial into South America, and the second, I think it was, time travel section really kind of lost me. There's also a really complicated play on the names, so they're trying to figure out who this guy really is and who he's related to, that of course is related to someone that they know. And it felt very, I couldn't follow it. I think when you write, and I say this mostly with nonfiction, but it's true about this too, it's your job to make whatever you're giving the reader something that is able to stick in their head and something they're able to hold. And all of the, like, this guy moved across the ocean, and then his son was named this, and then his sister was this person, was so far above my head. And that made the reading experience not great. She's fantastic at pace and dialogue. I was in one of these other books that I didn't love, and I was just so happy to be reading someone who had every bit of conversation in the right place and was moving me around really confidently and excellently. So I started skimming a little bit with that one chapter where I was like, why are we in medieval times and I don't really know what's happening. There were a few times the way they time travels with this unicorn, where those descriptions of falling through different winds, which is WHEN, the way you go through time, where that was a little longer than I was willing to commit to. But all that means is that this was a mid-read for me. And I have no way to know whether it would have been something I would be more into if I had read the first two, which is not exciting or fun. So maybe that's just what I get for jumping a TBR, for buying it when I had never heard of it before that day. But I am still so grateful for Walking on Water, and I would read a lot of the other stuff that Lingle writes. There was an interesting bit in the back of this where she was talking about the manuscript for A Wrinkle in Time was with her editor, and they couldn't figure out the name. She'd originally called it Mrs. Who, Miss What, Miss When, or whatever those characters' names are. The editor changed it to something like traveling. And then her mom calls her one morning, and she's like, because she had read the manuscript, and she said, I know what the name of your book is. It's A Wrinkle in Time, which is a line from the book, which is great. And it is, like, that is the name of the book, and that's part of why it's so legendary. Like, you really want to have a special title for a work of fiction, especially, and I think that's hard to do. I'm thinking about, like, this one, Our Sister's Keeper. That's so kind of general and vague and hard to remember. So that's my story on A Swiftly Tilting Planet. I would love to chat with anyone who's a Lingle fan. I also don't read a lot of science fiction, so my maybe capacity for that is a little lower. I don't know. The sister who I said is 22 is married. Her husband's in London or something, and she's pregnant in the book, which I thought is really cool for a kid's book to have a pregnant character. Then I read City of Ember. And then we're going to get to the book about children's books. Unless I want to switch the order, which for some reason I do. So let's. Okay. This book is called Make Believe. This is how we're going to be. On telling stories to children. And I have somewhere the real version. This is the ARC, but I don't see it. So, yeah. This is now out. I thought it was so well done. Mac Barnett is an author of children's books, like picture books, and he was recently named the Children's Laureate. Actually, that's it for Britain. In the United States, it's like the ambassador for young people's literature, and the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, appointed by the Library of Congress and every child a reader. A job you can tell is very important because it takes a very long time to say. I do not, guys, I could just read this whole book to you. And it has 3 essays in it about different things about kids lit. But what it really gets at its core is, why do we tell stories? How do we honor the imagination and the play of kids in the stories we tell when the kids don't get to be involved in the creation of the literature that they're stuck reading, which is not really true for quite in the same way for any other demographic, although you could also look at the whiteness of publishing and that kind of thing as a comparable thing to think about. He's specifically talking about kids' books, and he talks about the 3 kinds of kids' books as 3 types of ants, A-U-N-T. So there's the ant that's like always telling you what you're doing is wrong, which would be like a moralizing kids' book. And then there's the cool ant, which is the one who talks to you like you're a person. And that's a huge thing in here. And in recent things I've been reading, which is like, kids are full people. There's a book that came out about how spaces are now designed, basically about how the way our cities are designed is kind of anti-child. Like, kids can't use a city even though they are a human who has a right to be in this world. except for spaces that we have portioned off as belonging to children, like a playground or something. I haven't read the book, but doesn't that sound interesting? Anne Helen Peterson had an interview with the author on Culture Study, which is her Patreon, that I really love. I'm gonna find you the ants. There's the cool ant, which is the ant that talks to you like you're a real person. The ant that, upon seeing you, becomes a completely different person. Before you get to the table, you see her sitting there acting normal, but the moment you sit next to her, she transforms. Her eyes get wide, her voice gets loud, she smiles. Oh, how cute. She spells out words she doesn't think you should hear. She doesn't seem like a real person. So that was a really cool essay. There were so many nuanced thoughts in here. I thought it was three really well-developed arguments. It, to me, challenged or made me more likely to not think a picture book works that is only supposed to teach a kid a lesson. And I feel like I had danced around that a little bit, first with Big by Vashti Harrison, which I thought was like a 3-star read, maybe. And then this one. Hang on. Y'all, it's getting warm. I hope you're somewhere cold. Unless you're low, or one of my cold friends. Then I hope you're somewhere where you're cozy. This one, if you read my Substack, you recognize this. It is a gorgeous, obviously I own it, picture book that is so nonsense on the inside. And you should go to my Substack archive and read that piece if you want to make my day and learn something interesting. So I think I get the preachy, teachy kids books aren't super fun, but to have someone really spell that out and put words to it, someone who does kids books professionally, is super interesting. It was fantastic. A lot of people talked about online. I didn't care about any of that. A lot of it was absolute nonsense, and I find nothing less interesting than internet discourse as a rule, so we're not going to even talk about that. He has a new book out called The Future Book, which is so silly. It's the only Mac Barnett book I've read, I think. And I found the tone of this to be so great. The last thing I need to say is that the third section has a fantastic piece on Margaret Wise Brown and Goodnight Moon. She's the author of Goodnight Moon. She was a children's book writer in the early 1900s, mid 1900s, and first of all, she was a terrible teacher. She worked at kind of a school for kids, and the report cards on her teaching still exist, and she was not good at making the kids do what they're supposed to do. And he talks a lot about that, about being an adult who wants to tell stories to kids and play with kids, not an adult who wants to teach them, and those just being two different things. And then he does a close read of Goodnight Moon, which a close read is when it's exactly what it sounds like. You read every single word of something, and then you pull the meaning from the arrangement and the syntax and the illustrations for a kid's book, and you explain why it's profound or what it means. And that's a lot of what I love to do when I write. I loved reading his about Goodnight Moon because I almost don't want to it's so cool to hear someone explain why a book that lasted like that, why it lasted. And he points out it wasn't her most, she wrote like over 100 books. It was not her most popular while she was alive. But he has a theory that the book Goodnight Moon feels like what it feels like to fall asleep as a child. And it feels like bedtime in all of the vagueness and the strangeness of the book. And so people read it as kids and the sales fall off, and then like 20 years later it becomes something that sells consistently for the rest of time until now. And that's because the kids who got it read to them as kids really remembered it and wanted to read it to their children because of how fantastic it is at doing what a bedtime story should do. So I would completely recommend this if you are any human person. Honestly, I don't think you have to work with kids. I don't think you have to have kids. I think if you value stories, it is such a great time. I could get you a quote. children's writer should not repeat to children the same bromides they hear everywhere, but endeavor to tell those truths that can only be conveyed in a story. Yeah. Oh, he also can I tell you the whole book? Why not? No, keep going. Okay. Just read it. The next book I read was City of Ember. Actually, that's not true. We're not going in chronological order today, but nobody cares. By Jean Dupreux. And I had read this as a kid, probably twice, maybe more, and really enjoyed it. Interestingly, it was a series I never continued. And so I wanted to reread it, as I like to do, to see if the middle grade books that I loved are worth my current love. And I just love middle grade. It was so kind of exactly what I remembered, where it doesn't earn this crazy amount of love from me the way the Pinderwicks or Mysterious Vindictive Society does, but it is compelling, interesting, fun, exactly what you want. It's about these two kids who live in a city underground. Actually, they don't really know that it's underground until way late in the book, but all of the resources in the city are running out. They have adventures and they're trying to take care of the people in their life that they're responsible for, and the world is really cool, and the puzzles and the things they have to figure out are great, and it's well-paced, well-written. They do have and we talked about this with the great Julie Hawkins, where the bad well, actually, not specifically in Julie Hawkins. Percy Jackson is the worst for this, which I don't even keep up here, but where in Percy Jackson, all of the bad characters are ugly, old, or fat, or dirty. Usually multiple of the four. And that is lazy writing, I really believe. And I think it's cheap, and it's keeps you from being profound and interesting and saying things that are important. And I don't think it's cool for kids to have to only read fat characters as being bullies. And I also don't think that's realistic to how the world is. Where's my... Where is... Oh, my theory books are way up there. So, the mayor in this book is a example of that fatphobic tendency, where the bad character is a glutton, and he's a glutton that symbolizes everything that's bad about his character, and I don't like that. Doesn't work. But otherwise, it was great. So, 4 stars. Interestingly, I feel exactly the same as I did when I was a kid, which is that I don't think I'm going to go buy the second one and read it. Even though it has a really it ties up compellingly, but it also leaves you wanting more, which, you know, I think it's easy to read something you read and feel super differently about it. So maybe it's nice that, as Frozen 2 says, some things never change. Why did I put it over here? Okay, the next book I read is Graphic Rage by Aubrey Hirsch, and it's a graphic nonfiction. It's graphic essays. So we have our 2 graphic novels, Fun Home and Persepolis, both of which were pretty fantastic. And this is my first graphic essay. Aubrey Hirsch writes for, or used to be featured in The Audacity, which is Roxane Gay's Substack. That's the end of the sentence. It's her Substack. So she has her graphic essays featured in there. Now Aubrey writes her own Substack, and the essays are about gender, and I mean, I would say maybe all of them are about gender to a certain point, and what it's like to live today, if you will. She is so good at using the panels of a comic to do something that you couldn't just do with sentences in a paragraph, which is all you want. When someone switches forms, you want it to be worth it. You want them to earn the form that they're using. She's so good at like a final panel Like the words, if you just read them out loud, the last one hits really strong, and the image that she draws does. I actually took her comics for people who can't draw class that she does. She has a one that's 90 minutes, which is what I did, and then she has like a 6-week course that always sells out. And she was so inviting, and the course that she had designed was really newbie friendly. I learned a lot. I felt like what I learned about drawing relates to how I think about writing, and it was awesome. So you should totally think about doing that. Let me see if I can find there was one in here about catcalling that was great. This one is about how to get the medical establishment to take you seriously as a woman when the bias around the way doctors respond to pain is so gendered. So like if you're a woman and you're acting like you're in pain, then they'll be like, calm down. And then if you're acting like you're not in pain, they'll be like, you don't really seem like you're in that much pain. And she does so much research, so there's so much data with all of her comics, which is cool. And I got sidetracked by that one. I'm looking for the catcalling one. I'm gonna find it. Yeah, so a little more than a decade ago, I decided to stop being quiet in the face of street harassment. I was tired of taking it, of pretending I didn't hear these men, of treating harassment like a toll I had to pay for the privilege of being in public spaces. And then this is her hand with these coins, and then on the coins it has things like, smile, come closer, hey babe, whistle. So like the words that the harassment is made up of. And then they're falling on her head. And then here she's drawn out, and then the men are smudges. And some people did seem legitimately moved hearing about my experience. And then this guy says, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean it like that. Others did not. And then he's like, I don't care, blah, blah, blah. And then, let me see if this one has a good, yeah, so the final panel that I was telling you about, this is her drawn out. And then this is the same way that she's been representing the men all through the piece. And anyway, I really enjoyed it. I have read some of them before because I've been following her for a while, but if you care about that sort of thing, mainly women, that's horrifying. If you, for example, read Invisible Women, or if you didn't read Invisible Women, because I said it's a lot of data and it's really an amazing slog, a worthy slog, but nonetheless kind of dense and hard to get through, then Graphic Rage might be the book for you. The next book I read is If I Ruled the World. But first, I'm going to go get more ice packs. Okay, the next book I read was If I Ruled the World by Amy DuBois Barnett. Yes. And this one was not well written enough to be fun, and it's supposed to largely be fun. Not that fun books cannot also tackle themes that matter, but it is more straightforward about the way the plot works to express the themes than literary fiction or a book that is a little bit less obvious. So this relates to the breakdown of the Substack article that I love and will never link because I don't ever link anything or click any extra buttons on YouTube that I don't have to, but there was a fantastic article that really I should look up because writers should get credit for the fantastic things they do, and I do believe that, even if it means I have to click a button. But basically, in general fiction, which means not mysteries, not romances, that's called genre fiction. In general fiction, there's commercial, upmarket, and literary. So literary would be a really smarty, vague kind of book. Commercial would be like Crazy Rich Asians. I just read Kevin Kwan, we talked about last month. I had a fantastic time with Lies and Weddings. And then upmarket is kind of in the middle, which would honestly maybe be this Ann Patchett book. So the Substack article says that the difference between them is not that literary fiction is smart or good and commercial is bad. The difference is how much the authors want you to notice their sentences, which is such a good distinction because you can make meaning through any of these, it's a spectrum, but these three types of fiction. You can do each of these three types really well or really poorly. And the question is mostly how much work you want the reader to have to do. So, that being said, I would consider this a cross between, I would consider this commercial fiction. So on our spectrum, pretty far on this side. I skimmed starting at page 100 and I didn't lose anything. The fun thing about really high quality commercial fiction is that it is worth it to read every word and it is easy to read every word because the author has put every single word, paragraph, and scene exactly where it needs to be for you as the reader to be exactly where you need to be. And that is really, really hard to do. And a lot of popular, fun books try for that and don't hit it, and the reading experience is not great. So this was one of those. It is the author's debut, and maybe that's an interesting fact, I don't know. It is set in New York City in the 90s. It also, I think, tried to do a little too much. It was good vibes, and I think if you love journalism, fashion, and are willing to read it quickly even though it doesn't give you that easily, it might be fun. Guys, I don't like how sad this little guy is working so hard and looks like he's about to break, which I think he's been around since the 90s, so thank you. You just make it as long as you can, okay? Okay, 2 books left. I have no idea how long this video's been, which is silly to say because I'm either gonna have to cut it or not, I don't know. This is Whistler by Ann Patchett. This is the new Ann Patchett book that doesn't come out until June 26th. Ann Patchett is beloved of booksellers and book readers around the world. And she is known most recently for Tom Lake. I don't know that I want to do a whole Ann Patchett deep dive in this moment, actually, so I'm not going to get up and grab that. This book is set in Connecticut and New York. It follows a woman who's in her 50s and her husband, and is a lot of storytelling about the stories in life that you may or may not have told the people who are the most important to you. And the twist or reveal comes on page 6, and then the rest of the book, there's enough storytelling to do, and she's great at giving you just enough motion and plot that it was a really gorgeous read. End of sentence. Then, it interestingly, okay, in literary theory, there's different genres of critique, and it's basically like different ways that different perspectives you use to look at a piece of writing. And one of them is called formalist, which means that you only look at like what is between the two covers. So you aren't pulling in historical analysis, you aren't pulling in the author's biography, all of these things. You're just looking at the text and how it works within itself. This is a limited way to read anything, because everything we do is existing in the world and is in that sense political. And I'm reading How to Read Now by Elaine Castillo. So she has so much to say about that. That's gonna be a crazy fun one to talk about next month. That book is so smart. And anyway, I was really trying to be formalist about this book. The reason is that so many of the themes in this work of fiction are completely related to, the same as, similar to her life that we learned about in this essay collection, These Precious Days. So that was kind of wild. And I was really trying to say, I'm going to look at this for its own worth. Does this stand up as a story? Does this work? And then I thought, okay, I did that. Yes, it did. Interesting. Cool. What are all these parallels, and what do I want to say about that? And I think that some of Ann Patchett's earlier books really had teeth, and they had a spine, and they were pretty brutal, and not in the way it's like, oh, there's a lot of violence, but just, that's all I'm gonna say. And I think I'm glad I read specifically Bel Canto first. And a customer who'd read all of her stuff told me to start with that one. Then she does Tom Lake, which is cozy. Then she does this one, which is also cozy. Teddy was like, I don't think she's ever gonna go back to like the books with teeth. And I said, maybe you're right. Also, not that we can predict that or anything, but what I do understand is that as a writer, or even as a human, a lot of ideas that you care about are ideas that always come back to you, that you're always chewing on and thinking about, that the more you pay attention to something, the more you pay attention to it. And so I don't think it's reductive to say she pulled a lot of this from her own personal experience, because what matters is not inventing something from nothing, which is impossible. What matters is whether this can stand on its own as a well-told story of character transformation, and it does. So it is interesting, though, as an entrance into the Ann Patchett cinematic universe, because I almost thought, I bet every single one of these essays is represented in here to a certain point. There's an essay in here where she doesn't go shopping for a year, she cleans out everything in her house. A character does that in this. There's an essay here where one of her dear friends is going through cancer and chemotherapy. There is cancer in this book. Times so many more. And you guys, this is a really, really strong essay collection. Ann Patchett is sort of like, she's so everywhere that it's like telling someone to listen to Taylor Swift. Like, they either already know or they don't really need you to tell them that. And it can be a little basic in the book world to really, I don't think that's actually true. There's a lot of readers who pull for Ann Patchett. And just like there's a lot of people who listen to music who have cool music taste and also like Taylor Swift. I would say our two Nashville women are both, I think the analogy works for that. So it is super interesting if you're an Ann Patchett person. This is going to be so cool. And these, if you're waiting until June for this book to come out and you haven't read this one, you absolutely should. I think I said this when I reviewed this book, this is a really strong essay collection, and the way that she lands her essays is similar to Aubrey in this one, where it's just like she finishes on a dime and it's so cool. She's so good at writing. She's been doing it. And so that's what I have to say about Whistler. Yeah. Okay. I should get up, check the timer, decide that I could talk about this book for an hour, like I did with the Raven Scholar, and then go eat and then come back. But I gotta do it now. I want to go straight through, and I want to tell you about this book, and I want to see if I can do it in less than 10 minutes. And have this be just a one video, which we gotta just go, I guess, if I'm doing that. Okay, this book is called A Fever in the Heartland. The Ku Klux Klan's plot to take over America and the woman who stopped them. I got this at Church Street Coffee and Books in Birmingham, Alabama. The book buyer of that store has had so many books over the years that I love. I have discovered books there. I think, and I'm so torn of whether this is true, I think I found The Cloister Walk there for the first time. And I also would always front face Flannery O'Connor when I was there, which is, you know, when you turn a book to where it faces the front on a little display situation. And so I bought it. That's where I learned that independent bookstores matter. Viv bought a book there. I said, why are you buying it here? You could get that cheaper on Amazon. And then she explained to me the importance of humans picking out the books that we read, and the importance of ideas and different people curating how we find ideas. And I was sold from that moment on. So thanks to Viv for that. I didn't need another nonfiction book. I was in Birmingham in April, but I just was so drawn to this, and I on instinct bought it, even though I thought, this is not a hole in your reading. You have a lot of nonfiction that you need to read. You haven't heard of this one at all. And I usually try and, as we learned from this guy, hear about something a few times from places that I know will align with what I'm looking for in a book. But I bought it anyway. Then I needed nonfiction. I pulled it off the shelf. I was trying to think what's been here for a really long time, because usually once I buy a book, I'm going to read it in the next 2 to 6 months. And it was phenomenal. It was so good. Guys, this book was so good. It was so good. It was so good. It was so good that this is why it's okay to have so many books that I skim and that I think don't work, because when a book works, to experience that and to see every single thing that's happening to make it so special is just the best thing in the world. I don't even know where to start. When I finish this book, usually I write a review in the back. First, I had to write an outline, like a summary of what every chapter did, because Timothy Egan, put so much work into the research and then the structure of the storytelling. And I needed to make myself re-experience it and like ingest it and spit it back out, so that I had made it even more a part of me, and was able to remember the things that were important to me. I think it's normal to forget what you read, and that's how life works. If you don't remind yourself of things, Kat and I were just talking about this, then you forget them. And therefore, if it's something you don't want to forget, it is your responsibility to do something to help you remember. I carried that to it's maybe foregone conclusion with this little box, which is where I put things that I want, things that I need to learn. I think it's important as an adult to require things of yourself and require that you remember things and to do the work to do that. So anytime it's something like that, I put it in here and then I make myself learn them. Some of these are quotes that I wanted to memorize. Some of them are facts. 1 in 4 U.S. women go back to work within 2 weeks of giving birth. Yeah, American mothers. Okay, yeah. That's from Invisible Women. There's a Hanif Abdur-Keeb quote in here that I tried to memorize. There's the Wendell Berry quote, "The false and truly belittling transcendence is ownership," which was maybe one of the first things that I put in here. And there's I don't know why I'm like acting like I can't look at them right now. I'm not running my flashcards right now. This is a Susan Orlean quote from this book. Writing always feels, I did blanks because I was like, none of these are working as flashcards. They all just have the thing on the front that I have to like remember. Writing always feels new because you never build equity, which is such a good line. And we're not talking about this right now. This is also a box from my grandmother's stepfather. He ran the pharmacy in town in Perry, Oklahoma, and he was by and large wonderful to my grandmother. This is a cigar box, now 5 cents. But also when Black customers would come in and lean on the soda fountain, he would dust their bodies off because he didn't want them in his business, which is racist. So it feels important to me to have those ways I'm trying to make myself in a box that belonged to him as a sign of generational change and growth. Anyway, it's important to learn. Girl who reads many books thinks learning is important. Then I wrote my summary. Then I wrote my review. So this is my summary, and then this is my review. This is my timeline because I was like, I have to know this happened. I don't know if I can. I don't. Okay. I'm gonna do 60 seconds telling you what the book is about. Then I'm gonna do 2 comp titles, and then I'm gonna see where that leaves me. Okay. This book is set in the 19 teens and 20s. The Ku Klux Klan was The Ku Klux Klan was refounded on Stone Mountain in Georgia in 1915, I think, and spread like a multi-level marketing scheme. The person, D.C. Stevenson, who most of this is about, was the Grand Wizard of the Klan in Indiana. Don't know if that's the right title, don't really care. He became someone because of the power he saw, the potential for power he saw in the Ku Klux Klan and the ways to exploit that. He got money every time you join. Every person who joined it was $10 initiation fee and $19 for robes or something, and he got a cut of that for every person who joined the Klan in Indiana. He became incredibly wealthy and incredibly powerful. He also raped women just all of the time, which is not unusual, as we know, for men in power. And the middle of this book follows a woman who lived in the neighborhood north of Indianapolis, where he also had his giant palace thing, and he kidnapped her one night and raped her and bit her, and she kidnapped her up to Hammond, Indiana, and he has all these, henchmen enforcing everything, and she was so overwhelmed that she got them to take her to a pharmacy and said she was going to buy a hat or gloves or something, and bought pills or household cleaners to kill herself with, and attempted suicide. They took her back to Indianapolis, basically dumped her in her parents' house, and she had blood poisoning, and this is the story. She told that story to a family lawyer, and then it's like, how much to say? Earlier throughout the book, as he's telling you the story of this man, D.C. Stevenson, and the story of the Klan and the story of the power, he's also telling you about the people. There's a couple newspaper people, there's a couple lawyers who try to fight this power, and they get thrown in jail and lots of terrible things. So this case ends up galvanizing the city of Indianapolis because this woman was 28 and she lived, I don't want to spoil. And then there's a court case, and that was crucial to bringing down the Klan in Indiana. But imagine that, so good and so well written and so much research, and then so easy to read, and then all of the themes that matter being perfectly woven through the whole thing. It was amazing. 2 comp titles, as promised, both of which are in the Hall of Fame, people. We are not surprised. The first one is The Barn by Wright Thompson. I treasure this book. This is so well done. It's another white man writing about racist history, which is important. Not everybody cares about history. This is another book that has both a strong grasp of theme and a strong grasp of research. It is a book that everyone should read. But the book it reminded me of the most was Know My Name by Chanel Miller, which is the memoir written by the victim of the Stanford sexual assault case in 2015. And she wrote a victim impact statement that published on BuzzFeed and went viral. And she had majored in English at UC. Anyway, she has a middle grade book now. This is one of the greatest books that I've ever read. And what is so cool about both of these books is that they both explain the horrors of seeking justice, especially around sexual assault in the American court system. What's horrifying is that they read like they're exactly the same and they happened 90 years apart. Don't think too hard about that for your own sanity. The third of this book is about the court case, which I glazed over in my summary because I wasn't trying to talk all about the court case. They're so good. And it was a crazy surprise to have this one take place in Indiana. When I bought it in Birmingham, Alabama, I assumed the Ku Klux Klan was taking place in the South. No, Indiana was the biggest Klan in the nation. The Rockies had huge memberships in the Klan. At the end, he's like, oh, and by the way, this other guy in Oregon was indicted for embezzlement, and this other Klan leader in Colorado was indicted for rape, and the Klan kind of fell apart. And you've spent this whole book reading every single detail of this one hyper-specific thing, feeling like it is the whole world, and then you realize, unfortunately, horrifyingly, this was happening times 50, times whatever in all these other places in the country. I am so proud of this book in the way that you're proud of something you have nothing to do with the creation of. And I would just cry. Random page, another random page, just like little tears leaking out of my eyes. It was so thoughtfully and lovingly written, and I couldn't recommend it more. Oh, we did it. And I think I communicated enough my love without doing a whole hour on this, but read it. Let me see if I can get you one. I know I can't. I can't. I'm gonna be two. It's gonna be too hard to pick. Oh, there's photos? That's horrifying. It's so good. So, the best books I read this month were A Fever in the Heartland by Timothy Egan, and Whispered by Ann Patchett, and On Telling Stories to Children by Mac Barnett. And that is the tale to tell. Happy whatever day it is that you're watching this. I will see you next time. I'm thinking about doing an episode that's not just what I read that month, and that could be super fun. So